Hi everyone, welcome to our Resilient Community Workshop. Tonight we're going to have Hope as our speaker.
Right, so today I'm going to be doing part 2 of the parental absence. How do I get rid of this? I don't know how. Oh. Sorry, guys. Okay, so parental absence in adults, part 2. So tonight we will go over the specific effects from having an absent mother or having an absent father and the role it plays in the development of a person's identity. So I'd like to bring up that we know that a mother can take on both roles as a mom and a dad and vice versa. But we also know no matter how much a parent tries to make up the lack felt, it will always be there because each parental figure holds a specific role in a child's development of their identity. A father holds the place of helping their child gain confidence and helping them find direction in life, whereas a mother holds space for her child for emotional support and verbal affection. All right, so what do you guys think the effects would be of a male growing up without a father? Any suggestions?
Quite possibly emotionally distant.
Absolutely.
Maybe if he grew up with his mother, he might have more women-like qualities, maybe, or more just like I'm not sure. Actually, I actually said that because that's a similar situation. I have grown up. I was an only child with my mother. She was a single parent until I was 10. So it's very interesting. But yeah, I would say, among other things.
That's definitely absolutely true. Thank you for sharing. Definitely, they can possess more of feminine qualities. I know for instance, with myself, my brother basically grew up with just me and my mom, and he definitely does possess a lot of feminine traits, but I mean, that's not necessarily true completely, but they do hold a lot more feminine traits. Tony, you had your hand up? Or maybe you don't anymore?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have to agree with that. I actually was lost my father when I was 1 year old, so I never really got to know my father. He was in a car accident, and he died months later from complications. But I would have to agree that, well, I've also grew up with 4 sisters and a brother, so there's a lot of female energy around me. My mother was very nurturing, so I have a strong feminine side, like feminine energy. So I can relate a lot with females.
Right.
Emotions. I think I have a strong empathetic from that. My, how they say females are more empathetic. So
Absolutely.
I think I've inherited that that quality, which helps in in therapy and counseling. So yeah, I can't. It's funny because I can't really say much more than that because I really don't have anything to compare it with.
Right. I absolutely I agree. You definitely will hold that set of characteristics when you grow up in more of a feminine environment, but when you don't have anything to compare it to, I understand what you're saying. So thank you for sharing. I believe Amina had her hand up.
Yeah, also Janie has her hand up.
And Janie,
later.
after you can go.
Yeah, I know that, like, with my son, he doesn't have his father in his life, and um, I know I find myself trying to, like, I feel like he's lacking. Yes, because he's grown up with women, so he's definitely has those traits of, like, he's very caring and empathetic. He's really good with children. He's very nurturing. And then I try to maybe not overcompensate, but compensate for a man's role and when I say a man's role, I'm doing air quotes because I'm talking about, like, learning how to be a man in a sense of, like, pumping the gas for a woman or holding the door open or carrying things for women. I feel that I feel that maybe that's something fathers would teach their sons, but because he doesn't have that, I try to teach him those things, and put him in that role where he as a man or as a boy has to do these things, because it's kind of like, I don't know, I guess it's good and bad because I'm kind of going with the stereotypes of and gender roles.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are some things like learning how to change a tire, and there's just some manly things that it's just a general thing that I feel that he will lack, unless there's somebody there to teach him those things, because I myself don't know how to change a tire, right? So, but I feel like if he did have his dad, he would learn those kind of more manly things that most men in that man gender role play. So yeah, so I try to make up for that by teaching him these little things, like how to treat a lady, but there's always something I'm not going to be able to meet all those needs. I know that.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not a man, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Definitely, that's absolutely true. Like, you will, I'm sure, try to overcompensate and try to make up for that lack, but sometimes you just can't. And I hope that in the future he's able to find somebody that's more of like a male figure. It doesn't even matter if it's just like your friend or like an uncle or a grandfather, or just anybody, just to give him that kind of like presence.
And yes, and I do make, like, he does spend time with the males in the family, as well as like I put him in men's mentorship programs and different things, just to get those kind of, a man's perspective. So yeah. I try. Yeah,
that's amazing. Oh, thank you for sharing. Janie?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that I know that when a father is not present in a child's life, and depending on the situation, let's say like he was just absent and it wasn't like a death or whatever, I feel like males tend to maybe repeat that pattern, and they're absent in their own families when they get older, just because they really haven't learned how to be like present or how to be a father.
Yep. Definitely. That's definitely true. And there is potential for that as well. Thank you for sharing. Tony, did you have any? Sorry.
Just to let you know, Hope, there's a chat in the chat room. Crystal mentioned, my daughter also grew up without her biological father. Although she had great male influences in her life, she still grew to have abandonment issues, trust issues, etc.
And absolutely, like, that's completely given, because you're always going to have that lack of your biological father, but the way that you can have a male presence in your life is going to at least help you, guide you a little bit, but it's never going to be the same. And that's just what it is. But thank you for sharing, Crystal. Is there any other hands?
Yeah, sorry. I just want to make another comment.
Of course.
One like positive thing that I see coming out of it in the future is that I hear him talk about how, like, the type of father he wants to be, because he didn't grow up with his dad, and I guess that's something he lacks, like that's something that bothers him or whatnot. So he does talk about his future and how, when he has his own family, the type of father he wants to be. And it's very, he wants to be present. He wants to do this and he wants to do that. Like, he has all these dreams and aspirations of what, you know, I guess what he's missing out now, he doesn't want his kids to feel. So that's a, you know, like, that's a way, I guess, to kind of, I don't know, maybe heal or whatnot. But to me, that's a positive outlook on it.
And that's the thing. Everything in life is perspective. You can either look at what you have been given and recreate that pattern, or you can change your perspective on it and recreate something else, which would be to be a present father and do everything that you didn't have. But thank you. Thank you. And is there anybody else? I see Tony and Janie. Is your hand still up?
Sorry, that was from before.
And Tony, same thing?
No, well, it is, but I still want to add something.
Of course.
I wanted to mention that when I'm talking about a male and female energy, because, you know, I grew up, I was very handy. I mean, I've learned, like, I did a lot of mechanical stuff. I mean, I guess later on in life, I wasn't very sporty. There was no guidance there for sports, until, like, I kind of adapted that in my later teens, where I started becoming more athletic and, you know, getting involved in certain sports. But as far as, like, traits go, I think there is an influence, obviously, what you're exposed to, but you know, I loved working with my hands. I always was, you know, building stuff and doing stuff like that. So I think that kind of comes naturally, even though there's an influence. There's male traits and male traits and female traits, and then there's male and female energy. So when I say, you know, I've adapted a lot of, like, my feminine side, not so much that I've you know, do a lot of feminine things, but I do have to say that growing up, like, in my culture, like, you know, mom did everything. It wasn't until even later in my teens, in my 20s, even later than that, where I started to do a lot of stuff. I was a stay-home dad. I raised, you know, my kids when my partner went, ex-partner now, but went back to work. She was a teacher. So I did a lot of the female stuff. And I think that came a lot from just being nurtured from growing up with my mom. I don't know if it would have been different if my father was around. I'll never know. but yeah, it's an interesting. I've thought of that before, like how did that affect me growing up? And I didn't think of that. I didn't think about this. I didn't ask that question until, you know, I guess not that long ago.
For sure. And it's interesting that you say that too, because about the energy thing, because we all hold masculine and feminine energy. And a lot of the times we're supposed to balance them out instead of being more dominant in the masculine and more dominant in the feminine. And usually that's balanced when we grow up in a two-parent household that is attentive. But when we don't have that, a lot of the time we'll become more dominant in our emotions and in our receiving energy, whereas the masculine energy is more focused and more ambitious and go out there kind of energy. So it's interesting that you say that, but yeah, a lot of the time we don't actually think about these things. And it just, when something maybe triggers us, it gives us the opportunity to look and reflect and see why we may be a certain way, or what we feel we're lacking. And it's very interesting, but it's definitely a part of your journey when you do find the need to go down this rabbit hole and learn about yourself and what it is maybe that you're feeling or why you are the way you are. So yeah, thank you for sharing, Tony.
Yeah, I think that's it's tricky blend, like even if you have a mother, father, unless your parents are balanced, right? You know, like sound male who has a female male energy, and then a mother who has a female and male energy. Unless they're balanced, I don't think you're gonna be balanced. Exactly. It's gonna be, yeah, it'll still be like off a bit. So I'm definitely dominant female. And you know, when I hear all these stories and I hear you know, like relationship stuff, and they're, you know, the guy saying, well, the woman's like this, and I go, wait a minute, I feel that way, you know, I feel like, you know, I can relate to what the woman is feeling, right? And I almost feel like kind of I don't know what the word is, maybe resistance. I'm thinking like it's, you know, it's not always male or female, like it's persons. Like people are not one or the other, right? You know, so it's been interesting.
It is. It definitely is interesting. All right, thank you. So, fathers help develop and teach moral behavior to their sons. Sons very well look up to their fathers as a role model. Fathers teach important skills like confidence, resilience, respect, and kindness to their children. It is extremely important that a father teaches their child about values. Other factors of growing up without a father is addiction, low self-esteem, distress in day-to-day lives, as a boy's relationship with his mother also helps to reduce this stress as an adult, but the effect is smaller than that of a father. A good relationship with his father teaches a son better to solve problems, allowing him as a man to deal with everyday stress in more useful ways. Research has shown in Canada, 90% of all homeless and runaway males are from fatherless homes. 85% of all males who show behavior disorders come from a fatherless home. 85% of all youth men in prison come from fatherless homes. And 80% of men rapists motivated with displaced anger are from fatherless homes. So another thing too about this is just because the father may have been present, they also may not have been present. So it's the same thing with a mother being there, but not actually presently there. So this also affects you as it being an absent father or an absent mother as well. So what about a male growing up without a mother? Any suggestions on how that can affect you? I can't. Amina.
So basically maybe the opposite. So where like because the woman shows that more empathetic emotional side, so maybe the adult male may lack that just because they were never shown the nurturing. They never felt nurtured or whatnot, so they might lack that skill when raising their own kids or in relationships.
Definitely. Anybody else? Okay.
I was going to say, so I would think that there would be a compassionate sense there that they would, without having the mother, there's a certain compassion that the mother shows that the male would display throughout his daily acts, whatever he does throughout his days, like empathetic responses and stuff.
Absolutely. It's almost like it's like an emotionless like response. It's just kind of like a more masculine, like focused kind of response.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I think too, maybe there may be signs of anger or whatnot, just because I feel like I don't know, usually a mother is the primary caregiver from birth, like from even just gestation or whatever. But and because of that, because like every child is connected to their mom in the womb, and then when then say now they come out and they're raised without that connection, they may feel a sense of like anger and maybe lash out or just be just really miss that sense of female nurturing.
Definitely. That's absolutely a factor.
So then that would be the resentment then, Amina? Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, something like that. Because growing up, you see everyone with their mom, maybe your friends or whatnot. And just the way the society makes that motherly role in someone's life. Like everyone's like, like moms are held up here, but say you don't have one,
Understood.
So you might resent the fact that you're missing, so it might come out in resentment, anger, just in a negative way.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I'm going to get into that as well. There is definitely a statistic of males isolating themselves from other friends because of the resentment that they hold of growing up without a mother. So most of you should be aware of the significance of a mother figure in any boy's upbringing. Naturally, this unfortunate absence may leave room for countless problems, including negative influences on gender development. The mother is usually the first woman that a little boy loves and wholly cares about. Growing up without a mother can lead to a string of failed relationships with a higher chance of the child ending up alone. He will often lack the feminine influence, which becomes essential later in life. In Canada, there is a 70% chance of boys who come from a motherless home who have a higher risk of isolation because they are uncomfortable around other children who speak about their mothers. 76% of males who have no contact with their mother has an increased risk of future absence and abandonment occurring at the hands of males who come from motherless homes. 80% of boys that come from motherless homes have difficulties developing bonds with other adults besides the father. So there is a lot of factors. I can't.
Whoa, I never knew that was like just listening to that, like I was just hearing like without their mothers being present, it's almost like they lose their sense of like communication in that sense. That's what it sounds like.
Yes, it definitely is losing like a sense of communication, but it's also losing that sense of, like you were saying, compassion. And it's almost like they invert instead of being able to build other relationships with other adults specifically.
So then that would be the loss of their extrovertedness, I guess you would say.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Crystal says in the chat, maybe they may even develop narcissistic tendencies.
Yep, and also resentment towards other women because they didn't have that positive influence towards women, which also comes into having negative relationships with women in their adulthood because of the way that they look at women, whether it be being betrayed by their mother, again, just the abandonment. And it also ties into different attachment styles as well. And a lot of the time it comes to avoidant attachment style and insecure attachment because they're avoiding women because of how their mother abandoned them, whether they were in the picture from birth or they left half in their teenage years, but it definitely follows them into adulthood. All right. So what about females growing up without a father and those effects? Any suggestions?
Promiscuity.
Yes.
Bad relationships, going into relationships that aren't healthy, all types of stuff.
Yes.
I I was thinking more security in that sense. Like I feel like when I look at my dad, I see security, right? Like that's my protection kind of thing. That's my thought though.
No, it's absolutely true. Definitely they look at him as the like stability too, and like somebody that they know that they're protected by. Without that, they don't feel that way. Anybody else?
So are you saying that the female will get more attached to a male figure, to the point where the male will be dominant, like will find herself in a dominant relationship?
Yeah, that's definitely a factor, because she's looking for her parent in her relationships. So usually when you do that, you end up being in more of a controlling relationship, whereas you're looking at that as more of a like he cares about me, and it's validation, and it's, oh, he doesn't want me to do these things because he doesn't want me to get hurt. But realistically, it comes down to it being, it's controlling and it's possessiveness, whereas that's not very healthy at all.
So like it sounds like, because I know that happens even if you have a father figure, and you want to marry like a father figure, you want to marry that father figure, whatever. If you didn't get what you needed from your either mother or father, but let's say in this case we're talking about a girl, so she didn't get what she needed from her father, and she's going to look for that in the male figure. But in this case, if there's no figure, it's more of a need for security, and somebody will take control over that, right? And dominate the female.
Absolutely. And it's also like a need for closeness from a male figure, which is why a lot of women, as they get older, they resort to early sexual activity, because they just want that male like intimacy that they never received.
Right.
Can I comment? I have a comment. So I don't know if, I think this happens maybe more in just the case that I've seen. So my niece didn't have her father. He was alive, but he was absent. And we found that she always gravitated towards the men at functions and things like that, like looking for, I believe what we're talking about, like just looking for that male type of care. And like because her mom is my best friend, and when we talked about it, we used to be so concerned because, not all men have like, the good intentions. And we used to be like worried that like it would put her in a position where she would be vulnerable, like at risk for like sexual abuse and different things like that. So her mom like put her into therapy, but I haven't done a lot of research on this topic. Is this something that you think happens a lot in younger girls that don't have their father?
Absolutely. Like, absolutely. Actually, like in my previous workshop on Friday last week, I was talking about like the rates and the statistics of women without having a father, and the prostitution. And a lot of that comes from early sexual activity and the fact that they don't have that father figure. But then they also resent the men that they're doing it with as well, because there's that horrible image of a male because they were never there for them. So that abandonment kicks in too. So it definitely, they will gravitate towards more men. So I think that that's amazing that your friend put her in therapy so that she could kind of get to the root, instead of it mapping out in that way and then getting her into therapy.
Yeah, and like you said, that's funny how there's the connection with the prostitution as well. And I could see that because her not knowing what type of attention is acceptable and is what a dad would give you is what would just add so much more confusion to young girls. And if that person were to, you know, make advancements or do an appropriate thing, they may not know that that's not okay.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I was going to say that Tony had put his hand up, so I think he has a question.
Tony?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that it makes sense that the girl would, you know, because she engages early in sexuality and sexual activities, you know, and maybe leads to prostitution. But I'm wondering if the any resentment towards the male is coming from the fact that she because growing up without the father, she's got this idealistic image of what the father is, and then she comes across the male who starts dominating her, and then, you know, she starts to hate males because they like this is not the image that I grew up with, right? This is not what I expected, you know.
You grew up with or didn't grow up with?
The image that she had in her mind, like the idealistic, you know, this is what a father is like. A father is kind and nurturing and caring and fun, blah, blah, blah. And then she goes out, she latches onto a male figure, you know, early in life and sex, and then they're dominating her because she's vulnerable to that. And then she's hating the men and saying, you know, like, this is not, it's like almost like a disappointment because she had this image in her mind what the male father would be, the male figure should be, and then it's like she finally experiences and she goes, no, this is I hate this because this is not the right person, and maybe tend to go from person to person looking for that idealistic male image that she grew up knowing, right? Which wasn't, you know, not a true image, right?
No, you're right. Absolutely. And I'm sure.
So then, sorry, so I was just catching on to that. So then when Tony said that, so then does that mean that there could be a little bit of I guess they're going above the expectation of what they think is what a male figure should be like, or like I'm trying to connect the dots. I'm disconnected here. That's why I'm asking.
What do you mean going above the image?
Like in this, he said, for instance, that growing up, the daughter would have a thought process of this is what I know a male should be like, but then she ends up introducing herself to, I guess you could say, for better words, the wrong guy. And she's in constant search of this right guy that she has in her mind from her childhood. This can be a spinning effect. It can keep going. Like, that's what I mean.
So basically with that situation, like, it may not always be the case, because sometimes growing up, like, it also depends on if the mother was like always bashing men too, because then the idea of a man for her when she grows up is bad. So she could subconsciously be attracting that as well. So it could just also be, if she does have this idea because she had other male figures around her, she will still try to look for that ideal. Like, let's say it was her uncle, for instance, and her uncle was such a great guy, and she's like, oh, in her subconscious mind, she wants to attract a man like that. Okay. But she's not attracting that man because she's attracting the absence of what she had. So now she's getting all of these negative experiences with men, and it becomes now a resentment, like, oh, I don't even like men. Like,
and this was all to do with subconscious thought process then.
Exactly.
Okay, I get it now. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Anybody else before I move on? All right. So a father's love guides a girl to see herself as valuable and special. His lack of attention can be deflating. Research shows in Canada that absent fathers place daughters at risk for early sexual activity and teenage pregnancy. 71% of pregnant teenagers lack a father. Poor communication or no communication between father and daughter means that she is likely to have communication problems with other men. 71% of high school dropout women come from fatherless homes, and 92% are more likely to get divorced themselves. No relationship with their father are 68% more likely to smoke, drink, or use drugs compared to all teens in two-parent households. Sorry. So there's a lot of factors around a female growing up without her father. And the list continues with what we were just speaking about before I listed all of this. But
with all of these, does that mean that like if there's a lack somewhere or there's too much of something, that it could go either way in how they develop in that sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely. Okay. So what about females growing up without a mother and the effects? Any suggestions?
She may not have that I guess that she wouldn't be showing that nurturing quality that she would learn from her mother to be able to show for her children. Like if she has, like, let's say with, like, because you say it's an absent female figure, then she would probably want to feel absent from her children in that sense.
That definitely can be the case for sure. Or again, it could be perspective, and she could look at it like, I want to be the best mother ever because I didn't have that. So it could go either way for sure. But it definitely plays a huge role, because the mother, again, is usually the number one, like, caretaker in terms of giving that empathy and compassion and affection. But again, as I've been saying, there is two specific roles that each a mother and a father do hold for the development of each person.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Would you say that the female might tend to become more codependent?
Absolutely. And this also can be, again, like I was saying with the father, like the mother can be there, but she can still be absent. She can also grow up with the daughter can also grow up with the mother, but the mother wants to be her friend and is codependent on her for her emotional support. So there's so many factors that now the daughter is carrying that codependency and latching on in other relationships with that codependency, in her friendships, in her love relationships, even just anybody. So a mother is a teacher, a nurturer, a protector, a friend, and a disciplinary. She will be who they will call for guidance, acceptance, and unconditional love. A mother shows you how to set boundaries with negative feelings, like feeling dependent on someone for happiness. The girl may start to feel incredibly lonely and worthless, complacent. It may be very hard for the girl or a woman to move on in life. She may struggle with finding her place in the world and experience with alcohol and drugs, or try to get affection from other people. So I found with doing this research that there's a lot more, it's not necessarily different, but there is different factors with the absence of a mother, with a woman, and the absence of a father. And with the father, I see that it tends to be more of leaning towards like the sexual activity and getting the attention from a male, even unwanted attention. And with the mother, I find that it really has to do with like the nurturing, and also being able to like express yourself and feel like high self-esteem as well, because this also plays a factor. But yeah.
Hey, Hope, I just had a question. So I've heard it said around me a few times with like mothers and fathers and stuff like that. Like, say if a father disrespectfully treats his his wife in a certain way, then does that mean that if the child continuously sees that, then there's a chance that they will treat their future partners the same way?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because again, it's subconscious. So we tend to play out what we have programmed in our subconscious. So again, it's more of a familiar thing. So you recreate patterns until you acknowledge them and you break them. So it's almost like the intergenerational trauma playing out in their lives, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions? All right. So coping strategies for anyone who had an absent parent or parents. So even so, you may have lacked a biological mother or father figure, you can still find someone who represents a mother or father figure that you look up to, like an aunt or a teacher or a friend or a grandparent or an uncle. So I find that that's the best way, because it gives you guidance in a way, or somebody that you would idolize, or somebody who's almost like your mentor, because you cannot replace your mom and you cannot replace your dad. It's impossible. You're always going to feel that, but it is possible to find somebody that you can at least look up to. So reparent yourself. Give yourself the love and nurturance you didn't receive from your parents, and rewire your subconscious, which is connected to your inner child. For example, affirm that you are worthy of love and affection, and you are worthy of having fun, and you're worthy of receiving from others. Give yourself permission to feel. With that being said, what does that mean? Giving yourself permission to feel requires you to not stuff your emotions deep down, but to feel the sadness, feel the lack you suffered, feel the happy moments, feel the love you receive from people, and also maybe learn to feel, to acknowledge the feelings when they come up, and give yourself space to do so. Journaling is also a great asset. Triggers. Take note of any signs that come up in your relationships that come from your parents. For example, if you are constantly wanting to run away when you fight with your partner instead of sitting down and figuring it out, ask yourself, why is that? Is it fear of abandonment showing up in your relationships? Keep an inner dialogue of your experiences and bring awareness to it so you can heal it. Reassure yourself that his or her or both absence wasn't because of you. Get in touch with your inner child. Write letters to him or her. Reassure yourself that it wasn't your fault and that you are loved and you are always enough. Remember, hurt people, and that's usually never intentional. Self-help books. Self-help books can be life-changing, and there are so many out there that you can benefit from with this particular subject. Here is a few. This one is amazing, and I'm reading it as we speak. It's called It Didn't Start With You. It's about intergenerational trauma, and it goes so deep into your parents and why they are the way they are and how you can change it. Another one is called Inner Child Healing, Parenting from Within by Mark Wright. I can also put these in the chat as well. And then another one that's great, it's actually also very short, and it's called Healing the Child Within by Charles Whitefield. And therapy. Therapy is such a beneficial and effective tool for inner child healing. There are different kinds of therapies, such as trauma-informed approach, CBT, Gestalt therapy, parts therapy, and somatic therapy. And these are just a few. Forgiveness and understanding to release you from the pain. Forgiveness. Well, have you ever heard of saying holding on to pain is like drinking poison and expecting the person you're angry at to die? This is why forgiveness is so vital to our healing journey. So forgive, even if they don't know you have forgiven them. Do it for you and write letters. And support system. Finding a community of people you can talk to and lean on while healing is a great asset to your healing also. So why is inner child healing so vital to do? Any suggestions?
Well, from what it sounds like, from what I was listening to you say about the different coping techniques and understanding, is that if you don't address the issues that you've had in your past childhood, it can manifest into your adulthood and probably cause issues later on in your life. So that would be a reason as to why you should, I guess, heal the inner child, I guess.
Absolutely. And that's it. If we don't heal them, then they just continue to play out in our relationships, because our relationships stem from what we were taught as a child from our caregivers. Anybody else? Thank you, James,
Yeah.
by the way.
I would say, because when you're a child, there's a lot of stuff you can't deal with because you're a child. You're not mature enough to deal with them. And even though your body changes and grows, you're still a child. That's why you see a lot of people acting like children, because they haven't emotionally matured. So they've matured in the outside, but in the inside they haven't emotionally matured. They're still unsettled business from when they were children. And I always like the I make note of the example. Some people say, oh, well, now they're 18, they're adults, they should be able to do it, or be more mature, whatever. It's like it's supposed to be magic just because the age turns over. But if a person has not healed their stuff from their trauma from 2 years old, whatever it was. When I'm talking about trauma, I'm talking about the big T trauma and the little T trauma. I don't know if you have heard that expression. Because there's small traumas that are not like the stuff that's really like the horror stories that you hear, right? But there's trauma. It could be simple things, like a kid that's not listened to, for example, or abandoned, or mom's never there. They're crying and they're left crying, which is what they used to do in the old days, which was really bad. It was recommended by pediatricians, let your kid cry, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a new mentality now, right? And so that trauma, it just carries with that person. And who deals with it? Like, it's like teachers don't deal with it.
No.
Parents don't deal with it because they're growing with the kid. Everything's happening so fast. I mean, parents could, but not necessarily, because they're not qualified counselors per se. They're parents, right? So teachers don't do it, and then the kid grows up and goes into peer group, and you have a bunch of peer group that are like unsettled business. So unless that stuff is dealt with, you're carrying it with you until you deal with it.
No, thank you, Tony. I love what you said, because it is so true. Like, something as simple as not being able to express yourself as a child will carry on as an adult. And by you not addressing that and understanding that, will continue to carry on. And you won't be able to express yourself in any type of relationship. You won't be able to set boundaries. And those are all traumas. And without being able to address that, you're not able to grow. And the fact that people do base, you're 18 years old, you're an adult, is so irrelevant, because like you said, we are all children still. And I know people who are 50, 60, 70 years old and their inner child is still talking. And I can see that it's wounded. It's not even like, I can just see right through it. So absolutely, I think that it is so important, and it's something that we all need to do and address and understand. And even for me, for instance, I know that when I started to understand, a lot of the times you can't go to your parents because your parents were raised a certain way. And if they didn't take the initiative and doing any inner child healing, then you're basically talking to their wounded inner child. So it takes you to understand that the reason that they are the way they are is because of how they were raised. So, and because of all of the traumas that they also endured and never faced. So it is so important.
It's so scary, because sometimes you see leaders that are leading our country.
I know.
And they're just, you look at them, and I've had this thought one day. I was just sitting in the airport and I'm looking at these leaders shaking hands. I go like they're just a bunch of kids. You know what I mean? And one very well-known doctor, therapist, or counselor, you know, made a comment, and I'm sure a lot of other psychologists will agree. Like Donald Trump, for example, okay, he was the president, right? Mm-hmm. And what was said about him was like, he is so insecure, he's carrying stuff, like he was like abused when he was a child and all this stuff, and he's running the country based on all these insecurity. And you say, well, how could he be so insecure? Like he knows, like he's making these big decisions. Yeah, because he's got intelligence, but he's not emotionally intelligent.
Absolutely.
Right? Because he's not grown up. And for someone who never has enough, that's a sign of insecurity. When you're like, okay, well, you have this, but now you want more. Well, why do you need more? Aren't you secure yet? No, I need more money. I got millions of dollars, but I need more. So it's a sign of insecurity, because when is it enough for you? Like, you know what I mean? So, and it's scary, because there's a lot of people running around who haven't done child.
Who are big leaders.
I think everybody should do inner child work. Everybody, because we're all vulnerable. We're all susceptible to our emotional wounds as children.
Exactly. We're all human. And that's the thing, is that nowadays in society, yes, we do emphasize mental health, but nobody actually digs deep until you take the initiative to understand, okay, like my development was rooted from my upbringing. And what happened in my upbringing? Was there abuse? Was there suppression? Was there neglect? Was there abandonment? You really have to ask yourself these questions. And a lot of the time, like, this isn't necessarily something that everybody does. And a lot of people will walk around their whole lives, basically until they die, with this inner child wounding.
So would that be like a veil? Like they're blinded to it? Like they don't realize it? Like, could they be oblivious to it their whole life?
Well, I mean, nowadays we're so susceptible to being so surface level, because we have social media and we have a persona that isn't necessarily real. So we don't take that initiative to learn about like who we really are. And all of those insecurities come up and we just try to cover it up. That's it. With things like he was saying, what else like Tony was saying, what else can I get? And that's basically like, that's what we do. And I don't think that it's necessarily right whatsoever, but I think it's definitely vital for us to do the work. Did I answer your question, James? I'm sorry.
Well, I got caught up in the conversation. I don't even remember my question anymore. That was good.
I don't
it looks like James is doing outer child work right now.
Yeah. All right.
I just wanted to make a comment that like, I don't know, like I've heard of inner child wounds and things like that, and I know like we've all lived through traumas, but I don't think I've done like how James just asked that question, like people just live with it kind of thing. And I would say, yeah, because I really didn't know about, until school and presentations specifically about inner child work and how to even like approach that, or how important it is to deal with those things, because it's just, you get in a survival type of mode where you're just like, okay, it happened, this happened, that happened, like you just keep pushing forward, right? But then you don't understand like the impacts that it will have on your future generations. And just listening to this, I'm like, holy crap, I need a lot of therapy. My parents, like, it's all their fault. Okay. First of all, I just determined that. I'm like, yeah, but no, and on a serious note, like, just thank you for doing this presentation, because it was very, very like informative, and like just touched my heart in many different ways. And I'm definitely going to be looking into, that healing that part of me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that it was able to bring awareness for you. Yeah, it's crazy because like you were saying, like, yeah, people, they do live with it. Like we have two sides of ourselves, and it comes down to it being like our ego and then our true self. And a lot of the time we live in our ego because that's the persona that we can just walk around with all of the hurt. And our true self, it takes us sitting with the pain, sitting with all the trauma and healing it. And that's a lot harder to do than walking around with your other persona.
So does that mean that by showing that weakness to want to understand yourself better is considered weakness in the eyes of society then? Is that what you're saying? Sorry.
I don't think it's necessarily weakness, but I know that it's hard. I've been on this journey for the last 4 years, and understanding it, you think you're healed and then you're triggered all over again. So it's not necessarily weakness. It's more so just difficult to deal with, because it's a lot of pain that you have to dig. You have to dig to get to it, because we've done so good at protecting ourselves and shoving it down as deep as we can, just to be able to get through the day, just to be able to not think about it, just to be able to put a smile on our face. So, did I answer your question?
It's like peeling the onions. There are at least 7 layers. Like our emotional bodies have at least 7 layers.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it, actually.
And you'll be crying as you're peeling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you'll want to stop again and go back.
So does that mean that you wouldn't be peeling well?
You're funny.
The dad joke.
Yeah, but it definitely it's a lifelong healing journey, and you just have to be patient with yourself and compassionate with yourself. But there's a lot of different coping tools and skills that you can do to help with this, and a lot of self-help that you can do along with therapy as well. Great. So, seeing unresolved childhood trauma, pain, and repressed emotions as a separate entity, inner child healing can help you be more compassionate towards yourself. And the more empathy we can show to ourselves, the faster we can process and heal our past. But you are still your adult self when you do the inner child work. It's simply about accessing another part of your unconscious or a side of your personality. So inner child healing is definitely crucial and vital for your growth and to expand your consciousness as well. So things your inner child might need to hear. It's not your fault when other people are in bad moods. You are worthy of everything good. It's okay to feel. You are not alone. I am with you. And you are a good person, and I love you. You are worth protecting. You are beautiful and loved. What happened to you was not your fault. So another thing I wanted to say was, while you're doing this, I also want to say that don't blame your parents, because again, it's just like putting anger inside of you. You have to let go and understand and ask yourself questions like, why was my mom like that? What was her childhood like? Why was my dad like that? What was his childhood like? Yeah, Tony?
Yeah, I was gonna say it because when I heard that before, just my parents' fault. Like, I mean, that's a natural go-to, but it's human conditioning. It's passed on and passed on, and if we have adults who have never done inner child work, and that's like inner child work. It's just, I think it's in last relatively few years, it has become popular, right? But before that, it was just passed on. So you have these parents who didn't do inner child work. Now they're having children. Now their children are affected, and they're going to grow up. They didn't do inner child work, and it gets passed on over and over again, right?
Yeah.
And we're becoming more and more aware. So what came from the past, it's not good stuff. Psychology was not a big thing.
No.
You grew up and you survived, right? And now, life has got more complicated, and now we have unhealed people with more complicated lives. So it is just a human conditioning, and it's really, nobody's at fault. It's just the way it is. But taking responsibility for yourself is a key thing, right? And then you can kind of change the flow. That's where healing comes from, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, humanity, healing humanity it starts with you, right?
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was kind of joking when I said I was going to blame my parents. And I think what Tony and you were saying isn't very important. Like, because when I was younger, I did have a lot of resentment towards my parents. But then when I actually did understand the traumas and experiences they lived through, like my dad being a residential school survivor and things like that, it kind of gave me understanding, which then helped me to forgive. But then there just comes the point where it's like that I'm learning about like how to like now heal myself from those issues, and hopefully maybe be able to like change that with my daughter and my son, you know what I mean? Try to change those cycles from repeating. So yeah.
No, I actually I definitely agree with that. And don't get me wrong, like we're human, and like our natural instinct is to be like, wow, thanks a lot, dad, or thanks a lot, mom. Like you're definitely going to be like resenting them, but during that time, try to understand so that you can have a little bit of compassion and you can release that anger and hurt. But it's honestly only natural for you to feel that anger, because you do have to feel it in order for you to heal it. So yeah.
Sufika put in the chat saying it's true. Parents cannot give what they didn't receive. It's a learned behavior, it seems.
Absolutely. I agree.
Thank you, Sofika.
So then if the parents don't know how to do certain things, then how are they supposed to teach their children it too, right? So I guess that does make sense. So if they're lacking, then their children are going to be lacking in that sense, yeah?
Exactly. And basically that's where you take the responsibility for your life and you heal those things and understand and learn those things. Like, for instance, how to communicate, how to receive love, how to be affectionate, how to set boundaries. Like, give yourself those tools in order to do that, so you don't carry that on to your children, which is a part of the journey.
Well, James is starting his daughter young. She's all ears. She's taking it all in.
That's right.
Yes. All right. So thank you guys for all participating and being here. I have a quote here that says, "You may have a more grown-up body and more life experience, but you are every bit as precious. Love yourself as if you are the most precious thing in the world, because you are." And thank you guys. I loved our conversation and all of your input. And yeah, I
Good
hope
job, Hope.
I'll do inner child healing.
Yeah, this is amazing.
Like that.
Really good stuff. Good stuff.
Thank you.